Welcome to another episode of Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. Of course, I'm your host, JJ Kitchen, and it's the weekly Sunday conversation. But this one here tonight, after a bye week where Pitt had an opportunity to sit down, really reflect on the embarrassing loss against West Virginia and Morgantown, we brought together a great list of panelers on here. And I can tell you this, guys, they have great knowledge, but more importantly, they're great people, high-character individuals that we're lucky to have on here that truly enough to call them great friends, but people who have a way of knowing things, but more importantly, great knowledge when it comes to college football and especially our Pitt Panthers. Before we get into it, guys, this show is sponsored by Colonial Beer, located at 4986 Library Road in Bethel Park, PA 15102. Again, a small business. Anytime you can help out a small business like Colonial Beer. Bill and Alan, truly two of the best people you'll meet. Anytime you're in there, they'll always talk Pitt football with you. They're season ticket holders, Alliance 412 members, tremendous people. But when you're in there, they got a number of different selections. I go there before all of the tailgates, before even all the away games. Go in there, plenty of different selections between your heavier beers or lighter lagers. Ask them any questions, and make sure you go in there and say hello. Again, Colonial Beer, located at 4986 Library Road in Bethel Park, PA 15102. The show is also sponsored by Thompson Law Group with Brian Thompson, an attorney on your side. Call them today at 724-799-8404 or visit them at thompsonattorney.com. Again, you guys have seen Brian at the games. Luckily enough, Brian is a dear friend of mine. He's a great individual, has a great family, and comes from a great family. The great thing about Brian is he'll take you from the beginning to end in the process and whatever you need done in terms of your case. If he doesn't have the answer, he'll guide you through the process and put you in front of somebody who can answer those questions for you. Again, Brian Thompson, the Thompson Law Group with Brian Thompson, an attorney on your side. Call them today at 724-799-8404 or visit them at thompsonattorney.com. Last but not least, the K Collection, the coffee brand by Austin Kitchen. Personally, my favorite, the AK Espresso, which is really good. Again, I'm never a coffee person, but the AK Espresso batch, Austin has done a great job of being able to work with Major League Baseball and the amount of testing they were able to go through to make sure it's okay for them. But more importantly, if it can fuel a professional athlete, it can certainly fuel me and you. Austin, of course, is a Mount Lebanon alum, my younger brother, a Coastal Carolina Chanticleer national champion, and now in the Seattle Mariners organization. If it can help out a professional athlete, it can certainly help out me and you. Go online today at www.thekingscraft.com and get yours today. Well, again, guys, we got a great panel on here tonight, and they're coming on stage now. First up, Karlo Zovko, Harry, the Pitt guru, Psaros, out of PGHSportsNow, and Eric Dudek out of one of the greatest podcasts out there, especially when you're looking at the Steelers, especially TheBurghCave, and obviously Karlo out of the WPIAL Insider. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Appreciate you having us on.
Yeah, great to be here.
Thanks for having us, JJ.
Not a problem. Appreciate having everybody on here tonight. It's always been a really big goal of mine to get everybody on here at once because obviously each one of you are certainly well-respected, but more importantly, just great people, and that's really what matters most. And really to start it off here tonight, I know we'll have a lot of comments here. We'll have some super chats, a number of great people going through the comments section here. Of course, Russ Bayer always coming in here. Let's go, Karlo. Hail to Pitt. Karlo, obviously, we know Russ Bayer very well.
Russ, one of my all-time favorites. What a guy. Great man. Son is a stand-up human being, raised a great son, and his wife, Michelle, the best as well.
So always good to get them on here. And I know we'll have the questions going on here. But first, we're going to get into it here pretty quickly. Over the weekend, we saw this weekend especially, the biggest question that we saw out of the bye week, one, Pitt did not play, which is a good thing. I was able to give them an opportunity to reflect on what happened this past week. But was truly even worse is that West Virginia faced Kansas at Kansas and got absolutely their doors blown off, 41-10. The loss continues to look worse for Pitt, which isn't a good thing. I wanted to start off with Karlo here first. When you watch that game, I think, I talked about it last week, just the lack of preparation and what we saw really during that game. But I wanted to get your thoughts of, when you watched that game, what were your initial thoughts of, one, going into overtime, losing that game? What were your initial thoughts of it?
Yeah, it was sad to see because, I know that I was on here 2 weeks ago just talking about how West Virginia's roster is not a Power 4 caliber roster.
Yeah, me both.
But and I think it was even more evident they just got shellacked by Kansas, of all people, Kansas. And I went through this a million different ways, and you could just kind of see the emotion when Rich Rodriguez beat Pitt. You could feel the hatred that all of West Virginia had against the University of Pittsburgh. They threw the entire kitchen sink at us, brand new plays on offense, a whole new defensive scheme.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, this last game, at least, because you didn't really feel it with Neil Brown. I don't think Neil Brown really hated Pitt.
Hmm.
Rich Rodriguez hates Pitt. And I think that was the major difference is, when you are playing of a game of football and you have that much pride, that much passion, and, and that much hatred in your heart to beat the other team, sometimes that's all it takes, and I think the flip side is, Deuce probably feels that more with Penn State than West
Yeah.
Virginia,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, it's a bad loss for Pitt. I feel like they were playing not to lose instead of playing to win, and West Virginia was playing to win, and I think it showed. And unfortunately for our Panthers, I mean, I can't stop going back to look at that loss, JJ. I mean, it's not fun now. We have to sit there and eat our humble pie for 4 years as West Virginia gets to freaking dance around and prance. I have a couple WVU followers on Twitter, and just, I have to eat my crow. I can't say, I just have to tip my cap to them and say, well, yeah, you guys got us for 4 years. It sucks. It sucks. And I'm sure Penn State felt the same way, way back in the day when Joe Pa lost his last game to Pitt. Like I know that ate at him and ate at them. But, 4 years away, would they come back here? Or do we go there to start that series?
So the series will start back up here at Acrisure Stadium at
So it is here.
2029.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean we have to deal with that until 2029. They have the upper hand until 2029. It sucks. It's not fun. It's not fun losing a rivalry game.
Yeah. And I think to your point too is that, really listening to some of the stuff that, Narduzzi talked about after the game, I think that was a little concerning to me is, again, to your point, I think he takes the Penn State rivalry pretty seriously. But when you watch this, there were a couple things that really stood out to me in terms of just the post-game press conference. One was very lethargic, and I think anybody that watched it saw it was very lethargic, and it was almost like not a lot of giddy up. And you saw that during the game with a lot of the offense and especially the defense of how they played. But, talking about where players were, like, for instance, Blue Hicks. Where was Blue Hicks at? And the response from Narduzzi was, well, I asked, but I didn't get a good response. Pat Narduzzi is the head football coach. I mean, he should know where players are and demand where certain players are. Harry, when you looked at this football game and you watched how the offense really struggled the entire game. I mean, somehow Pitt found a way to get up 10 points. I think Scotty Fox really helped that out, with the way that he came in. But when you looked at this team from a beginning schedule where the beginning of the game to the end of the game, what did you really see when you're watching this game and just how dysfunctional, what really went wrong in your opinion?
You were kind enough to have me on and we discussed the backyard brawl. And obviously I come from the state of West Virginia, so I have a unique perspective. And Karlo, to your point, you have no clue the harassment I took, including this morning when I drove into church. That's true. I go to church in weird West Virginia. The point being, what really shocked me, West Virginia's not a Power 4 roster. They had tremendous upheaval. I think 60 to 70% of the roster was completely redone. Jay and I talked about it, and I said, on paper, we should win easily, 10, 14 points, if not more. But there were buts. And think of the 13-9 game. Pitt had no reason to win that game, or there'd be no way to win it, but they did. And that's what happens when you get venom, when you get hatred. This was an abject tragedy in all three phases of the game. And what really bothered me is when you see more penalty yards. And let's face it, when you're on the road, you have to limit mistakes. You can't have a Lyndon Cooper diving on top of a pile, senior captain. That negated, because of the missed field goal, points that should have been up. You make that, you win. Then you have, it was very telling. My brother, who doesn't watch Pitt that often, called me from New York and said, where's the quarterback that lit them up last year? And I go, that's the same guy. And it was almost like he forgot how to play the quarterback position, Then there were some inexplicable plays where you have the long bombs, and you have Poppy and the freshman, Yates.
Bryce Yates.
From behind, which was it looked to me like they were going to go for a touchdown. So the frustration to this game was just, it was an abject failure in all three phases. They did look lethargic. They looked intimidated. And it was really sad. I knew with the last two drives, our defense was spent. And both teams deserved to lose. I will give West Virginia credit. If they're watching any of the fans, they found a way to win. And once it went into overtime, to me, it was already a done deal. The momentum was going their way. We had seemingly no way to score. It's very frustrating. And that does go back to coaching. And I'm not going to blame them completely for a lot of the odd decisions that Eli made. In particular, the interception in the red zone. He makes that, the game is over. There were so many points left on, but I think just the lack of discipline, the penalties, including Blue Hicks had one that was critical. Lyndon Cooper had one that was critical. Gouveia had a very bad game, to be quite frank. I hate to isolate someone on the line. He looked like a turnstile, and he had 2 offsides penalties that killed us. So you need that discipline if you're going to go on the road, especially against a team that hates you.
I couldn't agree more. And to your point on a number of different things, one of the when I went back and watched it again, I've watched the tape on this game 3 times just to go back and see exactly how did we get to where we were. You know, we talk about lethargic. I mean, the offensive line, we're supposed to have an up-tempo offense. When the offensive line's walking, when the wide receivers are walking, when the quarterback is walking, and just there's no giddy up. Like it's just where is the preparation in this game? Where this is a rivalry game, but more importantly, you're 2-0 at this point. Every game matters if you want to go to an ACC championship game. And I just didn't feel like this team was really playing for an ACC championship game. I questioned a lot of what Eli Holstein was doing, and a lot of underthrown passes. I mean, I counted at least the bare minimum of 17 points that we left on the board. It should have never been a ball game at all. But again, bad quarterback play, bad offensive line play. And then to the offensive line's point, I think there's a little bit of schematic issues with blocking up front. And that starts with Cade Bell. Eric, you have a great background where you played wide receiver. You played it at Division I level. When you're watching, for instance, and you were lucky enough to where you're on Twitter, really helped me out, especially with that interception, really in the red zone. You saw a bunch of guys almost stop. I mean, pretty much instead of completely running its route, and you saw guys jogging on the football field. When you were watching this game, especially from a guy that's played on the offensive side of the football, what did you see from the quarterback situation to the wide receivers? What exactly did you see when you were watching this football game?
You know, it looked like they were waiting for somebody just to make a play. And some of that will require like some sleepwalking at times. And for those who did not see the interaction, and I chimed in with JG on game day with that, and I think Harry referenced the red zone interception that Eli threw. It was a compounded bad play to begin with. So I believe it was Fowler L was going in motion.
Yep.
And I forget the receiver that was set to the top of the formation there. What it is, it's a classic tail or trail technique to where the guy who's set, he runs and he clears out, and then Fowler L comes in and he basically trails him. So the guy pulls the coverage and he hits Fowler L coming in. Now, if that zone coverage, if that backer sits, the first guy's going to be wide open. So it's like you're going to Eli's first read, from what I understand, is that first backer. And not only did the backer not move, and he kind of threw the ball correct, but the fact that the Pitt guy stopped, did not pull the backer out, it made the throw even tighter. And even with the tighter throw, it was still behind him, and it hit the West Virginia guy right in the chest. And to Harry's point, if you hit that, game's over. Game is over. And I spoke about before the game, there was three keys, I believe, that Pitt had to do to win that game, and they didn't do any of them, right? Control the line of scrimmage. For the most part on the defense, they did, until the end. Like, Harry, I agree with you. They just got worn down.
Right.
Yeah.
The discipline. And it wasn't shenanigan penalties like I thought it would be. It was just Pitt self-destructing.
Right.
Yeah.
Cooper's play was just – I mean, that's a field goal. At worst, that's ball game. If you just look at it, and then you have the chance to put them away and put them away early. They did not do that. From the 4th down throw to Kenny Johnson, it was missing the tight end down the sideline for a touchdown. We already referenced Cooper and things like they could have put West Virginia away and gone up probably 20 to 21 points in the first quarter, second quarter, and it would have been a different ball game. There would have been even more turnovers probably with West Virginia. because, like you guys were saying,
Yeah,
they're
they would have
up,
spiraled.
not-
100% would have spiraled, and we kept them in the game. Kept them in the game. You can't keep bad teams around, or they'll pull it out of their ass.
at any level. You're correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Karlo, to your point, from what you're saying there, especially just keeping them around, the decision's tough. And I know, people were certainly talking on social media about the 4th and 4. One, you got to get credit where credit's due. And Narduzzi wanted to go for 4th down on that play. There was a miscommunication between Cade Bell and Eli Holstein, which we had seen all day. Yeah. The other thing that was very noticeable is, I will say, Eli looked very shook in that football game. And we saw a fumble on the first couple plays. I mean, he's trying to throw the ball out because he's receiving immediate pressure. But the fumbles in that game, it was almost like guys were losing the ball at any certain point in that time. When you look at it, Karlo, when you're watching that game, I understand it's a rivalry game. Would you have made, for instance, would there be a possible situation where, if you're seeing a quarterback, one that's struggling like that, and obviously too, Eli took a very harsh hit, basically, I mean, pretty much punched Eli Holstein in the nose. I mean, pretty much, it looked like it broke his nose. Was there an opportunity in there that you think, hey, should we have taken the quarterback out? Should we have rotated offensive linemen? Was there anything that we could have changed in that football game, or just keep it the way it is because, one, you have so much continuity?
That's a great question, JJ, because I think I was at kind of a little party, and either I said they should think about taking Eli out, or maybe I even tweeted it. But, Cole Gonzalez comes in for a play, and he throws it 30 feet up above, who was it? Fowler L.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, well, this guy's not ready either now. And I don't know if Mason Heichel would have been like a Kenny Pickett-esque true freshman or something. But at some point, you have to realize, hey, maybe today is not your day,
Yeah.
and it's not easy to do, because number one, to pull a starter and then try to put him back in later in the year, that can mess you up big time psyche-wise. So, I could be persuaded either way. I didn't hate them keeping him in, especially because, he went bonkers in the second half against Cincinnati last year and against West Virginia last year. So, he proved, a year prior that, keeping him in the game and keeping him fighting can lead to good things. So I didn't hate them pulling him, but sometimes, you just have to admit, hey, it's maybe not our day. And, Des Reed going out pretty early, that hurt too. I think if you have Des Reed the entire game, I don't even think it's a game. But at the end of the day, you kind of have to see this. You have to have some foresight, gentlemen. Des Reed is small, it's small but mighty for sure. But when he gets hit, it hurts. He's only 5'5", 5'6". So, I think not really addressing the backup running back in the portal. And I get it. They like Joel Goff. Awesome. I like Goff too. But you need to have a couple different answers if your running back is 5'6", and I don't know if they necessarily have that. So I don't know. I think not having great foresight with Des, I get it, he's a returning All-American. You don't want anybody taking his snaps. But at the same time, you got to have that insurance policy, and I don't really think that we do right now. So it could hurt.
And I agree, especially to your point. Go ahead, Harry.
Two thoughts to just spawn off of what Karlo just said. What I noticed, so when we think of Eli, I always love the quote last year of the Baba Yaga. And if you know anything about John Wick, it gives you chills. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's the boogeyman. He didn't, to me, I saw timidity. I saw him being very timid, very antsy. I go back to, people like to rip Kenny now, but Kenny Pickett was the consummate leader. That confidence level people feed off of that. If you just looked at his body language and you looked at the way he was throwing the ball, I really think it was a conduit to the offense, and it didn't help matters. The other thing I really was a little perplexed with, I know we lost Des Reed. I don't think Goff is that bad a running back. We were averaging, I think, around 5 yards a carry. And Bell seemed to run away. He seemed to really shy away from the run, and I was a bit perplexed. I mean, if you could pound the rock a little bit, you keep him honest, and then you might be able to hit Poppy, for a longer shot. And I didn't quite understand the schematics or the game plan there at all, because I really think Jules Goff is quality back. Karlo, to your point, they probably could have maybe done a slight upgrade in the portal. I think they tried.
Or at least give, at least have that third back, because, if Dez is out for an extended time, well, now you only got Goff in a true freshman, so
Right.
And I think Derek Davis not getting healthy is that hurt them as well. So I would have loved to have Derek Davis again this year.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I think to that point too, I was a little shocked to where, people certainly have the perspective of, Cade clearly likes smaller receivers, likes smaller running backs. I just don't think that's conducive to being successful in Power 4 football. If your system is very much circled around smaller guys, I don't think you have a good system. I see Alabama running with bigger guys. I see Georgia running with bigger guys. I see Ohio State running with bigger guys. Illinois, Indiana. We just saw Indiana. I think Illinois was probably way overranked. I mean, the Big Ten is a little overrated for my taste, but Indiana certainly blew the doors off of Indiana. Illinois yesterday. We're seeing teams with bigger guys. I mean, you saw, Ty Edwards for West Virginia, a larger back, out of northern Iowa, something, out of the FCS.
And even CJ Donaldson last year.
Yeah. And now he's with Ohio State.
Yeah.
I didn't understand the lack of not wanting to get a bigger back. And I know there was a couple bigger backs that were out there that wanted to go to Pitt, and there was just no desire for it. Then you see a bigger wide receiver, like, especially as a true freshman. I watched yesterday in the Kansas game, Levi Wentz out of Pine Richland starting at Kansas.
I agree.
That kid wanted to come to Pitt. His mom was certainly tweeting at me. I mean, the coaches.
I don't get that.
And
I could tell you, Levi and I used to go back and forth. Levi wanted to be a Panther, and he is a bully of a wideout. He reminds me of a Hines Ward. I actually wrote down when you were mentioning the Kansas win, Levi Wentz is right here on my paper. It drove, I'm with you. I don't understand the rationale for not bringing him in.
And also, too, you look at the offensive line, and again, to your point here, we don't want to single anybody out, but at the same time, you got to call a spade after, your 2-1 start. I was very upset a little bit about the bye week being early, but now I changed my mind to where I think it's a really good thing, because, the one thing that does bother me is that a guy, it's a legacy name like a Jackson Brown, his dad, Tony Brown, obviously a legend with the University of Pittsburgh, has not gotten an opportunity to play on the offensive line yet. I think he's one of the bigger offensive linemen that we have. I think I understand why they're starting Keith. They brought him in as a transfer, but he was a fringe starter at Richmond. He did not start full-time there. How is Caleb Holmes, a former 4-star offensive lineman, not getting a shot? How is Jackson Brown, who comes over from Cal, had over 20 Division I offers in the Power 4? I don't know if it's a coaching thing. I don't know if it's a schematic thing. I don't know if it's a political thing. I don't know. But, I guess to ask Eric, do you think when you look at this offensive line, would you shake some things up going into Louisville, or would you run the same crew out there and then you'll have a short, basically a short fuse on some guys, and then if it's not going as well, we see more repetitions of the same stuff we saw 2 weeks ago? Do you move other guys in the lineup?
It's hard to do with the offensive line because they need to be cohesive. Yeah. Obviously, they're going to know in the film room if who's missing blocks, who's blown up. I mean, from a fan's point of view, we're just watching it. The interior of the offensive line is where they're struggling, and we don't know. And also, too, some predictability of when they're running. Constantly running out of shotgun, like I was saying before, limits your running book, if you will. So maybe a short leash on a few guys if they're continuing to get blown up, up the middle. You would be open to it, but you guys would know better than I on the depth chart who is there, as far as the recruits and things like that. But the things I would shake up, obviously, we might be getting to this as well, is if Eli could be on a shorter leash, I would be very interested to see who the backup is this week.
Yeah.
Because if Heichel actually comes in as the backup, because that's what I think is you can't just throw him in as a starter, in my opinion. But if he is now the backup, I think that would be sign number one that Eli could be on a short leash. But to answer your question, I would be a little bit more patient through this game with the offensive line, but I'd have a little eye on possibly replacing somebody in the interior.
JJ, and Karlo, when you exited the staff, I can't remember if you were pre-NIL. I think you were, but it does make you wonder. And this is where the NIL is interesting. They paid for. I hated to throw his name up, but I did. Gouveia had a bad game, but he was brought in and paid probably handsomely NIL money.
Yeah.
And you hate to think it might influence their decision to start them. And you mentioned someone like a Caleb Holmes. It was practically almost a 5-star recruit. He had over 40 offers. So it does make you wonder in the age of NIL what commitments are made. And I particularly don't care if you're not playing up to par. I don't care what they're paying you or what the guy that's going to get it done put in. But it does make you wonder in the age of NIL with these commitments. It drives you crazy. And I hate to go back to this name, but I will. Djokovic was another example. He came in, and they wanted him to be the guy, and they paid him. And obviously, going back to the last backyard brawl, that was a disaster. So it's interesting, but it's worth talking about.
Yeah, I think that that definitely has to influence your decision making a little, because number one, you don't want to have the donors that are paying for this like, hey, sorry for benching your guy that you're giving hundreds of thousands of dollars to.
Right.
Better luck next year, But I also do know Pat Narduzzi, and I know that he will do anything to win a football game, and he doesn't give a shit where whose money is what. He's trying to field the best team possible, and I did predate the rev share. I had a little bit of the NIL, but just a tad. I mean, when I was in the NIL, it was like $30,000 was big money. Now that's like chump change right now.
That's a tip.
But
yeah.
But I look back at like the scholarships and walk-ons, and Pat would treat the walk-ons the same as the scholarships. And if a walk-on beat out a scholarship guy, I was like, well, too bad. I don't care that he's a walk-on. He's the best player. He's going in. So I don't think Pat would be like that, but I do think that you do have to tiptoe a little bit. Like, hey, we're paying this kid a whole lot of money. I would love to get my money's worth. And also, I don't want the donor that's maybe breaking him off a little bit to get pissed off that his guy's benched either, So I do think that there's a line to tiptoe, but I also would trust Pat Narduzzi to field his best team. That guy, he will do anything to win, So I don't think that it would be a major concern, but I can definitely, you at least have to defer. If it's even, you have to defer to the money guy for sure.
Yeah, no doubt.
Exactly. And I think that when you look at a number of different players, what you don't want to see, and I think that most Pitt fans, again, there's a lot of negativity, obviously, for good reason with Pitt fans right now. Who ends up showing up for the Louisville game will be interesting. But, Max had a good question, and a good point here. For me, the biggest shock is Eli. Not sure if it's injury related or it's a coaching issue. Regardless of what it is, it's killing this team and holding them back from winning. I think what Pitt fans don't want to see is a relapse of Phil Jurkovec, where, Frank Signetti had a very personal relationship with, Jurkovec and really believed in him and wanted to keep him in there, and didn't make a move till later on. What you want to see is that this staff has grown. Now, to your point, Karlo, I mean, there have been commitments made. Harry, I mean, to the point where a great deal of money for a quarterback in college football, they're doing very handsomely well. So you want to give a guy as much of an opportunity as you can. I just think going forward, you saw the first two games, you saw some questionable play. You saw that, he got better as the games went on. But then when you saw this West Virginia game, it almost got to the happy feet. And you heard it on the telecast where the guys are like, he's nervous out there. I mean, he's not seeing the field very well. He's not seeing the check down that's there. He's not seeing guys that are open down the field. He underthrew Kenny Johnson on a number of throws, overthrew Holmes down the sideline, overthrew Holmes, Desmond Reed down the sideline. The injury to Desmond Reed was a whole crazy thing to me. We didn't know why he was out. He was standing on the sideline. They said it was a lower body injury later on. That was a huge debacle. We didn't see Blue Hicks for a number of portions of the game. Just the lack of preparation and watching that game was startling. I mean, it was to the point where I understand if you lose a game and hey, you lose it, hand over fist. Hey, it happens. I mean, sometimes, and I said this before, whether people want to agree with this or not, and I know the West Virginia fans in the comments and they're watching the show, but that is their Super Bowl. I mean, I saw numerous times yesterday during the Kansas game, they're down by 30 points. And numerous people came out and said, well, at least we won the Pitt game. Yes. That is not the same thing at Pitt, where we want to win the backyard brawl. We care about the rivalry. I want to play West Virginia every year. But I got news for you. If I lose to West Virginia, but I win an ACC title, that's more important. I'm sorry. But it's just more important. They can go 2-10 this year, but Rich Rod is, they're happy that, hey, they won on 9-13. When we beat them 13-9, they were going to a national championship game. It's a little bit different, but to each his own. But at the end of the day, there's a big difference between what we're looking at. And I think what the problem that I had is I saw a team that just looked like they didn't care. I mean, you go back and you watch the tape between jogging, between walking, guys weren't conditioned. Just the lack of preparation on offense looked out of sorts, disoriented, not knowing the calls. 4th and 4, we're supposed to go for it. We don't snap the ball. In the third game of the year, in the second year of an offense, that shit shouldn't be happening. I mean, it's absolutely embarrassing on a national level, which then leads to a game where you're up by 10 points. Your defense is known for stopping the run, but you give up over 200 yards rushing to a West Virginia team that didn't even rush for 100 yards, not even 70 yards against Kansas. So, again, there's more of an attitude for each different game. That the backyard brawl is a different animal. But watching that game, it was a little concerning to me that some players, just when you watch them play, and again, you don't want to call anybody out, but I mean, when guys are getting paid, there has to be an honest discussion about certain guys that just aren't playing hard. And the reality is that people want to say, they're kids, they're younger athletes, and I agree with that. And I motioned to Nick Saban in terms of when he talks about how it's important to develop young men, and I agree with that. But these guys are getting paid. They wanted the professional style of this. And look, you got to play it hard all the time. And I just think there's a major concern with that.
JJ, if I could add on top of that, I rewatched it one time. I would have rather had a colonoscopy with a heated lead pipe than watch that game. But I rewatched it. And I'm sorry to Mountaineer fans. Rich Rod is no genius because he did everything possible. On top of everything, JJ, you just said about Pitt, he did everything possible to hand them the game. When he started playing, replacing the quarterback, Markiel, who's actually
with Scotty Fox, a true freshman.
Put Scotty Fox in, and we're right back in. So what irritated me watching it, I knew how badly Pitt played initially the first time I watched it. Watching it the second time, I was angrier, and I'm normally very zen. But knowing that Rich Rod did everything possible, he's no super genius, I can tell you that, to give Pitt the game, and we still couldn't pull it off. So, again, that's at the end of the day. I give them credit. They found a way. They wore us down at the end.
They did.
But overall, 2 horrifically ugly teams that day. It was terrible.
I even tweeted the same thing. I said, neither one of these teams want to win this game. I mean, it was just,
that was true.
Literally just asinine. I mean, first off, when he pulled, I heard there were concerns about Jalen Henderson because he's not able to throw the football down the field. And we saw that in the first couple weeks and then the Ohio loss. But to throw a true freshman into that game in the backyard brawl, when you have that's the game they sell out for, you have all that pressure in that game. How in God's name do you put a true freshman in there who, immediately just, you can tell is nervous. He's not playing like he normally does. He's a true freshman, but also it's not like Nico, they couldn't move the football for the whole entire first half. They had really one good drive. But when you looked at the game, he wasn't doing anything to hurt West Virginia to where they're not turning the ball over or anything like that. And when we're at a tailgate, we're watching the game, the amount of people in that room, like 10 or 15 people in that room went, why the hell is he putting a true freshman in the football game when you're winning the game? It's not like you're losing. They were winning the game. I think it was 7-3 at that point. So, Karlo, when you were watching that, were you shocked that they went with him, or just was there any type of thought process to why they were doing that, or was it just bad coaching?
I think it was Rich Rod once again just throwing everything out there, just doing anything he could to win the game. And I don't know if Deuce did this week. I would hope he did. But I can remember the rivalry games, when we were kind of restarting all these rivalries, especially against West Virginia in the early days of Penn State. Pat would bring back all these former alums to kind of talk about the history and the hatred involved. And I don't know if he did that or not this week or last week. I hope that he did. But I just felt like the end all be all of this game was West Virginia wanted it more. West Virginia had more hatred in their heart, and
Yeah.
exactly what Harry said, that venom. If they bite you, it hurts, and boy does it hurt right now.
And it's funny, it hurts. And also, too, there was a former player, I won't say who he is, but a tremendous football player who I consider to be a true Pitt man through thick and thin, played in the 2008 to 2010 era. And the first thing he said to me after the game was, JJ, that team is not anything of what a Pitt football team should look like. But he goes, I feel bad for those guys that they don't understand what it would be like if Bill Fralick walked into that room after a loss of what it meant to lose to West Virginia or any team like that. Right. Because, I mean, the amount of times Bill Fralick, whether he was on the radio or any time he was around the program, there was a certain level. I think to this day, even Narduzzi says he is by far one of the best pregame speeches that just goes around. I mean, he had a light that was different than anybody else. His presence was different when it came to Pitt football. I mean, that guy was just, I mean, just a godsend to Pitt football.
Tony Siragusa as well. If I could add one more name.
Yes. The Goose, absolutely.
The Goose he's right. They're right up there with
the Goose is the Goose is. They sent he sent a clip before 2019 Penn State when we lost by 7 up there. He sent a clip because he couldn't come in. I mean, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. What he said pregame, and I remember tweeting about it. Somebody was like, "Well, now that you're off the staff, can you send it?" I was like, "If I posted this on Twitter, I would get expelled from Twitter."
Yeah.
Like, it was that explicit, and it was.
He is not shy. He's not shy at all.
Not shy at all. Not shy at all.
And maybe that this stuff really does change because of the transfer portal. You have different guys coming into different programs. But at the end of the day, when you look at this game for West Virginia, they had 81 new players. And I think that it really pushes to the edge of, we're only 3 games into the season. There's still plenty of ACC play left. I would say to you guys, and I guess Karlo first, I know you have to hop off here pretty soon. Do you think there are legitimate corrections that this team can make? Because I think when you go online right now, it's just doom and gloom. I think there's a fatigue of Pat Narduzzi. There's a fatigue of losing games we shouldn't lose. But do you see that there's areas to where they can really improve and really turn this around?
And I do understand that because sometimes I do feel the same way. But I will end on this. Nobody circles the wagons like Pat Narduzzi. It doesn't matter how low you are or how bad you think you are. Pat can get this thing right. He's an excellent football coach. He beats opponents in the offseason. He cares that much. His pride is very deep. And I understand that shine on that 2021 ACC championship, it's starting to lose its sparkle a little bit. And like when I'm saying that, that's bad because that's my pride and joy, that 2021 ACC championship. But I have full faith in Pat Narduzzi. Trust me, that 2018 season when we were getting blown out by 50 the first couple games, and then we rallied to make the ACC championship. And that's Pat. Like he won't allow those players to get down and to get out. And I know in 2023, shit hit the fan with Frank and Jerkovic, but they still had an awesome win against Louisville that year. Like he circled the wagons there. They probably should have beat Wake that year. That team could have lost every game by 40, and they were competitive for a decent majority of it. And they almost beat Florida State that year, who was like number 2 at the time, if you remember. Yeah. So no, I have full faith in Pat Narduzzi to right this ship. And the only silver lining here is that West Virginia loss that didn't count in the ACC standings.
That's a good thing.
Sure.
Stephen Angeli just I really like the Syracuse program. It's a shame that he just tore his Achilles this year. Syracuse might be bumped out, or they're going to lose a couple with a backup QB. Clemson's already lost 2. ACC's wide open, and I'm telling you, Pat can circle these wagons and get us back to Charlotte. I have full faith there.
Karlo, before you hop off here, tell them where they can find you. Obviously, I know the WPIAL Insider people know, but tell them where to follow you at.
Yep, follow me on Twitter at WPIAL_insider. We have an awesome time there covering the WPIAL. My personal is at KZovko, KZOVKO. I'm kind of new to Instagram on WPIAL Insider. Same tag there at WPIAL Insider. Yeah, we have a lot of fun just covering WPIAL football. That's kind of my bread and butter. I love it more than I love Pitt, and that's saying something. But yeah, try to do a good job there. But yeah, send me a tweet or message anytime, and I'm normally pretty good at getting back to people. JJ, appreciate you having me on. Nice seeing you fellas as well.
No
Take
problem.
care,
Thank you for coming on here. As always, appreciate you, Karlo. You're welcome on here anytime, brother.
I'll see you guys. Bye. Thanks, JJ.
See ya. And I think to Karlo's point there, he had a very good comment there. I think from talking about how Narduzzi can gain the wagons, but also, we haven't started ACC play yet. I think that's really the number one thing that Pitt fans really need to look at this point is that we haven't started ACC play yet. There's more of a discussion that needs to happen in terms of what this team needs to do to get better. I think that they can get better. It starts with the offensive line. It starts with the quarterback play. It starts with actual execution on a day in, day out basis of what they want to do. I think to wrap up this segment here, Harry, to you on this one, do you think they can, for what's been shown through the first 3 games, again, and to all the Pitt fans out there, it has only been 3 games. They are 2-1. They are not Clemson at 1-3. They are not Florida at 1-3. They're not Notre Dame at 1-2. I mean, there's a lot of other teams that are out there that are on the hot seat. UCLA, who hasn't won a game. Oh, actually, no, they did win 1 game, but they have a head coaching fired. Virginia Tech just fired their head football coach. They're 1-3. Harry, do you think that right now you see something that says, hey, you know what? Pat Narduzzi can turn this around and really push these guys and get them to really execute a lot better?
So my direct response, first of all, the schedule's brutal. And the only reason I say that, if you're looking at teams that are trending up, you have Syracuse, you have Georgia Tech, teams I didn't see coming and are playing exceptionally well. And to Karlo's point, they did lose their quarterback today. And I hope he recovers. But the game, to me, not to state the obvious, will be Louisville. I want to see if they come back and they look pathetic or anything comparable to what they look like against West Virginia. It's going to be an exceptionally long season. The game after that is Boston College, and you wisely, JJ, have pointed out, it is Pat Narduzzi's kryptonite. I don't know what it is about Boston. If he doesn't like baked beans, I don't know what it is. But BC always beats Pat Narduzzi, just like Pat always beats someone like Virginia. So this is not an easy schedule. I think the next game will tell me a lot. Does this team have character? Does this team have leadership? Can they come out and get it done? Louisville is not an exceptional team. They're average
I agree
at best. So to me, that's your barometer. Because I got to tell you, in particular, my God, you're looking at Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, and Miami the last week of the season. Brutal. And I mean, so this could be an exceptionally ugly season. Looking at this, so I'm gonna be watching with bated breath next week, praying that they come back. And if they show me some mojo, you never know what could happen.
Eric, what are your thoughts? Do you think that this team can get better? Do you think that they can really turn it around since ACC play has not started? And really, I think to all of our points here, why it's still they're 2-1. There are plenty of different areas they need to get improved on for sure. And to Harry's point, this is a game that everyone's going to be watching to see exactly what they do. But do you think this team can turn it around? And should Pitt fans still be engaged to what Pitt's doing?
Absolutely, but I would say patience, though, is key. You can't get everything back in one quarter, in one drive. If this game is not 40-10, they should still, I'd say pump the brakes. I think what you should look at, what's important for Pitt, and I do agree, Louisville is a pivotal game right now because when you come off a game like that, forget a rivalry. It's just an inferior opponent for this year, right? Based on the rosters. You should be able to come together as a team, get back to the basics, if you will, and come out swinging. Now, what I mean by that is, let's see what the penalties are, right? They had 9 penalties the first 2 games and then 14 against West Virginia. Are they back down to the 5 or 6 penalties or less, right? is Eli coming back and at least hitting a few of those balls? Are they playing opportunistic football, meaning, when they're in that goal-to-go situation, they're not airmailing somebody on top of a pile and taking a stupid penalty? Are they not screwing up routes? That clean, crisp play, as I think, is something we want to look at. Now, I would say this: if they come out and there's, again, 5 or 6 or less penalties, you can look like, this team is playing well, but it's only like a 20-17 game. I still think you could feel okay about that.
Yeah.
Even if it's a loss, it becomes more of a panic, I think, because of the bugaboo you guys are saying, Boston College, and then you got Florida State after that. But if they come out and they win, and they can get 2 of those type of wins between Louisville and Boston College, then I think you would feel good going against a team like Florida State that seems to be very hot this year.
I agree. And, to close it out, I think that there is an opportunity for them to fix it. To Pitt fans that are currently always in my DMs or tagging me and stuff, it is only 3 games into the season right now. They are 2-1. It's not like they're 2-6 or 2-7 or, God forbid, they're 0-3 like some teams that are out there. Allow this to play out. The Louisville game, again, I'll be there. I know all of it will be there. The game's important. And I think that going forward, there's still a lot to look forward to in terms of the ACC. If you can remember, I'm not saying this is the same team as a 21 team, but if you remember, we all were saying the world was falling when we lost to Western Michigan in 2021. It was the 3rd game of the season. Here we are in that same situation again. Can they circle the wagons and find ways to get better? I think, again, to this point, the schedule is brutal. The schedule is hard. I mean, again, Louisville, the boogeyman with Boston College. Then you have Florida State, Miami, Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, NC State we've had issues with. So you look at the schedule and you hope that they say, hey, what can they do to correct it? I think that, Karlo has a very good point that Pat Narduzzi can circle the wagons. Now, that leads me to my next topic. And it's a question that is very hypothetical in the terms of what we're talking about here today. And it looks towards more of the progression of this season as it goes. But the Narduzzi era, I think that when you look at really Pittsburgh football right now between Mike Tomlin and Pat Narduzzi, there's a people out there that are certainly exhausted with both. And I think that in Pitt's case, it's the 11th year. You're watching a team that's coached like this that has major issues on both sides of the football, whether it's conditioning, whether it's play calling, whether it's just the system itself. Is there a certain amount of games that you think that Pat Narduzzi has to win that you kind of have to tell yourself, hey, he has to reach 8 wins this year, or there needs to be a serious discussion that, after 11 years, unfortunately, Pat's going to have to look to retire, or is there a better opportunity else out there? Because I think that the amount of people that are just exhausted and just having conversations with people that outside of the podcast world, on Twitter, in person, the amount of time someone comes up to me and says, JJ, it's year 11. If we're going to continually see the same stuff year in and year out, we need, and I heard it today, which was pretty crazy because I had this as a topic on here. And I said, well, you'll probably want to tune in for it. People are exhausted with it, and they want their fan base to be rejuvenated. And they feel as if there's potential where if Narduzzi doesn't turn this around this year, that after 11 years, you know what? In the year, an NIL with donors, everything else, raising money, does Pitt need to go in a direction where Pitt only wins 4 or 5 games this year? Do they need to go another direction? So, Harry, first up, do you think if Pitt wins, 5 games or less, or 5 games or less, do they need to move on? Or if he wins 8 or more games, should he stay? It's a loaded question.
It's a loaded question. So let's start with the first scenario. If this season goes awry and we're looking at 4 to 5 wins, my gut says to me that Alan Green is going to want his man in place. He understands the age of NIL. What's important to know in the age of NIL, if you're going to do a coaching change, you cannot waffle. If you waffle, you're going to lose 80% of your roster. All you have to do is look down at Morgantown and see what they have. Yes, I know they beat us. If anyone wants to text me, but the point being, right now in my gut, Alan Green is preparing a list of candidates, and he should be. That's his job. If this season does go awry, what I would like to see is they work out something where Pat Narduzzi retires. Fans may not want to hear this, but he's given Pitt 11 years. He has brought a culture to Pitt. He's brought stability, and I understand not all the wins everyone wanted, but he's done a lot of great things. He came in when Pitt was in absolute chaos. I don't want to go back to the Todd Graham thing, that firing of Dave Wanstead. We were a national embarrassment.
I agree.
It was embarrassing. I had my Allegheny Gator gear on, but it was embarrassing to have my Pitt gear on at that time. So I would like him to be treated respectfully if that occurs, instead of a beheading and he's gone. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now, you pose a great question. If they win 8 or more, JJ, that's dicey. I don't know what to tell you there. My gut still says it may be time for a change. And I'm aware that that's going to be a significant disruption. But you and I know, too, there are some donors that are waiting for that to happen to stroke a check. That's just fact. I know this from a lot of from the quote-unquote old Golden Panthers and things like that. So this is a very critical season for him. I never want to talk really ill of what Pat has done, because I appreciate what he has done for Pitt. I do. I'm one of the few last guys holding that stake down. But this could turn really abysmal if we don't win this next game, in my opinion. The only winnable easy game to me, Stanford looks horrible. With the exception of that, it's a really rough schedule. So if I'm Alan Green, I am starting now, because you can't be behind the 8 ball. I just had shoulder replacement surgery a week ago. If you get behind that pain, which I did, bad move, because I went through absolute hell for 48 hours. Like, even the OxyContin they gave me didn't even touch it. So the point being, if you're Alan Green, you want to get ahead of that cycle. It's absolutely critical in this day and age. So, like I said, if he somehow manages to win 8 or more games, that's a completely different discussion. Then there's some rationale for staying. And as we all know, Heather Light did them no favors by extending them to 2030, I believe.
2030, yeah.
That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. Look at Luke Fickell. Everyone wants him out right now. I think I just saw a $25 million buyout. I would gladly leave my current company if they pay me that tomorrow. But that's the problem. You have to be very careful with these big contracts, and Heather did Pitt a disservice with that huge extension. So we'll see what happens.
And I agree with your point there on numerous points there, Harry, is that, one, they gave him a 9-year extension, which didn't make any sense at the time period. To Luke Fickell, $25 million would be the second largest paid buyout in college football. The number one, obviously, being Jimbo Fisher, over $70 million at Texas A&M, which is absolutely obscene. The oil money is flowing down there. But, to ask you, Eric, I mean, right now, in the last 41 games, Pat Narduzzi is 21-20. He's now lost 6 consecutive games to Power 4 opponents. It's an honest discussion. And I Pitt fans have been hitting me up about it, because it's the facade of it's year 11. It's not like it's year 4 or year 5 or year 6. It's the 11th year, and you're having the same questions, and you're seeing a decline. Really, after 2021 and 2022, you finished the year ranked in the top 20, really in the top 19. Pitt finished the 2021 season ranked 13th in the country. They finished the 2022 season ranked 19th in the country. 24, 23, 24. Now here we are in 25. He has a losing record against Power 4 opponents. He's currently on a slide that we have not seen. There is a very good debate that says, are we going in the right direction? And, I personally agree with what Harry said. In the age of NIL, for where we are, and if you're, and again, I've said this about, unfortunately, about universities at this point, they make bad deals, but also too, in business, you have to look at the overall structure of the organization, your chancellor, your AD, and your football coach. And whether people want to hear this or not, football pays the bills. It turns, as we like to call in business, it turns the lights on. Yep. So the reality is right now that what does the future look like? Do I really think that this guy can take us from here? Which, again, to Harry's point, he has raised our ceiling. We have won an AC title. We have been to the AC championship game multiple times now. I mean, it's a fact. But with the way that the game is changing, and you need the adaptation around the league, and you're competing with other coaches who are really good at making adjustments, helping their team win. Harry has a great point. I was really on my point as well. even if he does win 7 or 8 games, I think, to really prepare for the upheaval in 2030, which we could really see a lot of conference realignment, I think there are head football coaches that are out there. And I know people are saying, well, the buyout's very large. I got news for people. There are donors that I've heard, like Harry has heard, that want to stroke that check and said, hey, let's go in another direction. I think behind closed doors, Alan Green wants his guy. He certainly wants to prove himself. From multiple people that I've talked to, he's a very confident guy, to put it lightly. He certainly wants to do things his way. NIL, he's brought NIL in-house. He's put Pat Bostic in charge of NIL and business development. He's brought Doug Whaley on, in essence, as the general manager of Pitt football. He's moving things in the right direction. He has opened the athletic directors fund. He's brought millions of dollars in that way. My question to you is, really in the same structure, for where we are now, if Pat Narduzzi wins 5 or less games, do you get rid of him to go get somebody else for the future? But also, if he wins 8 games, do you stick with them, or do you fear as if it's the same exact scenario? So again, a bombarded question for you, but What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it is. I mean, do I have like 20 minutes? But
guess what? You're in a unique situation where you have the Mike Tomlin stuff that you deal with, but now this here, you kind of have a really unique perspective.
So and then it's funny because I actually did a video on the TheBurghCave YouTube about Tomlin after the week 2 loss to Seattle, and every year it's the same thing with Tomlin, and honestly I understand it. And what I was talking about, as soon as you said the way the organization is, or in this case the athletic department, right? I think we have to take a step back and look at that as a whole. Okay, a coach's message doesn't get stale if it's effective. Right. This is coming from a player's perspective, too. Like if I'm in there, and the only way they know if it's effective is in the film room. He's preaching certain things. It's producing results, whether it leads to a W every week because it's so hard to do, or it doesn't. But where is, and again, I know the college game is a little bit different than the pros, right? Especially now with the NIL. Mm-hmm. And I was looking at this, and you guys know these numbers better than I, especially some more of a micro level of this. Since Pat Narduzzi is 74 and 57 now, counting this year. It's about 56.5% winning percentage.
Mm-hmm.
It's 2-5 in bowl games, and then we mentioned the ACC championship, and then another appearance in there. The previous 14 years, Pitt is 107 and 81, 57% winning percentage, 5-6 in bowl games. So since 2000, they're basically a 57% winning percentage program.
Yeah.
Okay. So to your point of making changes, and I do think, Green is like any good general manager in the NFL. They want their people. If we hit a 4 or 5 win season, I do think there's changes that are made from Narduzzi and the whole staff, right? If he does come out and is able to get 8-9 wins, maybe even 7 if it looks good.
Yeah.
And because of the contract buyout, even though you guys say there are donors waiting to write these checks, and I would obviously take your guys' word for it, I think that there could be another year or so of Narduzzi, but I think you see Cade Bell gone and other coordinators like, okay, if you're going to stay here, we need to make coordinator changes. And I would say he starts stripping Narduzzi of maybe some of his power. And you guys know better than I how much power he has as far as the staff and who he brings in philosophically, right? I think that's that balance too. If he kind of turns it around a little bit because of the contract. Now, I would say if there's a better buyout scenario, I think he'd be gone regardless unless they turn around and run the table, right? But because of that contract that you guys are speaking of, I could see Green bringing in somebody that maybe he sees as a future head coach. I don't know who actually would want to come in as a coordinator here unless they're saying, you know what, come here for a year. We got some contract details to work out. And in 2027, this is your program, is a head coaching perspective. So it's a multi-tiered answer to your multi-tiered question. But there's so much more we could dive into that as far as the teeth goes. But I think 4 or 5 wins, as in Pittsburgh would say, but I do think Pitt needs to look at what they've done the last 25 years, and they've been a 57% winning team. And how do you change that? You shock it by someone like Green bringing in somebody that Pitt normally doesn't do, whether it's opening up the checkbooks, doing a major philosophical change, and obviously NIL is going to help that. So we'll see. It really depends on how they perform starting next Saturday.
You know, it's interesting in this day and age too. There is no it's a crapshoot in terms of the probability of a phenomenal hire. It really is. And the reason I say that, you look at, I mentioned his name before, when Luke Fickell went in, that was like the premier hire that cycle. People were going crazy. And you know what? They should have been happy. His record
took Cincinnati to the college football playoff.
I mean, they should have been ecstatic. Now, my Lord, if you search his name on X, you know, they want him out tomorrow. They want to pay that money. Then you look at someone who went in with little fanfare, like Clark Lee at Vanderbilt. Yeah. And what he has done, and they've been a moribund program. They've been like an afterthought program. Yeah.
Them and Rutgers.
It's so hard to find. And even in people have criticized Alan Green when he hired Brian Harsin down in Auburn. But
that was a great hire.
It was a great hire. If you remember back, he was a hot name. You know,
he was at Boise State
before. Even Virginia Tech, some really bad luck. But you go back to Fuente. Fuente was like the guy. If you brought him into your program, you're the next national championship. He fizzled, and they again, when they talk about a crapshoot, they bring in Brett Pry, and he would struggle with a little league team. You know what I mean? So it's interesting. It's a crapshoot, but there are up and coming young candidates out there, and I do believe bringing in a fresh new attitude to revamp the program would also bring a lot of money. So
they bring a lot of money, I think. Yeah,
Eric's dead on. I mean, if you're not at a legitimate bowl game, when I 6 wins, you could go anywhere. I'm talking 8+. Then it's a different discussion. But man, I don't know. With this schedule, it's going to be significantly difficult for this. I think this year to get to that point.
And I agree with you both. When you look at Narduzzi, and I talked about this before, and I told the fans, this will be a conversation for this week because we're not going to do this every week where we're talking about the job of Narduzzi because it just hurts the overall college football season. But to your point, Harry, I mean, in a perfect world, you would hope, Dave Clawson has seen it. A number of head coaches have seen it in college football where the game has passed them by. And the way that they coach, I think that if this game was, again, 10 years ago, Pat Narduzzi's your guy because you've seen the success. He has shown the success, unlike head football coaches. Pat Narduzzi did something to Pitt that hasn't been done in 40 years. He won a conference title. Dave Wannstedt, I think, if he's not fired and has, a Pat Gallagher or an Alan Green or a Heather Lyke, if he has those resources, I think Pitt's in a whole different stratosphere because of how he was able to recruit and the amount of upgrades that Pat Narduzzi was able to receive. But in a perfect world, you would hope that Pat Narduzzi at the end of the season, regardless, would say, hey, I want to leave on my terms. I don't want to allow someone to make that decision for me. Mm-hmm. I'll go on and do something else, and I think that there's a fatigue of that. But to your point, the buyout is massive. I can tell people that right now. There are big forces. There are former Pitt players, NFL guys, who are certainly looking for a change, who have very much bigger pockets, but much bigger say in terms of power to the athletic department. The buyout's massive. But I think that, like anything else in a business, if you allow a problem to continue, you're only destined for more problems down the road. If you see a problem, unfortunately, you see different areas of where coaches just are not doing the job. And I think in college football, for where we are, if you do move on from Narduzzi, you're going to see a spark in this fan base because I think the fatigue is there, and it's not just them. It's the high school football coaches in the area, which I have heard that the WPIAL, I have had coaches reach out to me and just educate me on what it's like to be recruited and whatnot. And those conversations have been out there. But when you look at college football right now with names out there, you've got Memphis's head coach out there. You've got Bobby Chesney down in JMU. You've got Brian Hartline, who's been in a number of different searches from Ohio State. You've had Alex Golish, the head coach down at USF. When you find that right guy, and you find the right guy, or Andy Kotelnicki, who's been out there on a number of different searches, when you find the right guy who's younger, who can provide a better opportunity and an understanding of how to recruit, number one, but two, how to build on NIL and embrace it. Even at this point, go look at UNLV and Dan Mullen. Dan Mullen, he gets fired from Florida, which is probably one of the worst decisions Florida's made. He left there with a 35-14 record. I mean, they fired a guy at 35-14, and they've never recovered since. I think that when you find the right coach who can coach, but also it's not just coaching anymore. It's the fact that it's legitimately talking to donors, talking to recruits, talking to your athletic director, your chancellor, which I can tell you right now to the Pitt fans that are watching, I can tell you Joan Gable and Alan Green are very much in the fold of understanding that the front porch, and I've said it on this channel before, the front porch of every university, whether they like it or not, is athletics. TCU, a prime example, went to the national championship game, and their applicants went up 319%. That happens for a reason. And Pitt has broken records for the last 3 years in applicants and has grown their overall enrollment at the University of Pittsburgh, which is a good thing because you want to continue to bring more people in, bring in more revenue. It only helps the university. But I think that this Narduzzi era, I think that if he wins even 7 or 8 games, or even potentially 9 games, I think that's a great opportunity for Pat Narduzzi to go out on a high note. And, whether that happens or not, we don't know. Obviously, Pat's a very pride guy. He's a prideful guy. He wants to continue to coach and do what he wants to do. We get it. But I think that there's going to be an honest discussion down at the end of the year to where if Pitt wins 5 or 6 games and this schedule gets out of hand, because it's not easy. And I've told people this, and I'm glad, Harry, you said it. Eric, I'm glad you said it, because sometimes people hear me say it, and they're like, well, you're just being, facetious towards the ACC. I'm not. These are good football teams that we're going to be facing here, and it continually shows.
Mm-hmm. I want to add just 2 things again. I'm going to repeat what I said before, though, and Pitt fans need to grasp this. If it goes awry this season, Eric talked about it, if you're looking at a 4 to 5 win season, whatever it is, I believe, though, Pat Narduzzi earned the respect to go out on his accord. I want to stress that again. Yeah. And you're being foolish if you just want to kick him to the curb and burn bridges. I disagree. Second of all, what drives me nuts, and I've had 20 DMs that said, Harry, who would come here? It's a bad job. I wholeheartedly disagree. You have a premier program with as you said, a chancellor and an AD that are all in, that understand football is the priority. You're in a sports town and you share facilities with a 6-time Super Bowl champion. I completely disagree. I'm so sick of Pitt fans. I love them. They're my family, but they're incredibly fatalistic. Yeah. And a lot of that is because of the era prior to Pat Narduzzi, where we are on that emotional roller coaster. So I'm with you. I've rode that roller coaster, unfortunately, and I vomited afterwards. But that being said, this is not a bad job, and I truly believe that if it does become available, there's going to be some very attractive candidates.
I agree. When you look at I can tell you right now, if for revenue sharing purposes in this football team, Pitt has spent over $12 to $13 million, if not more, on this roster. Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, but depending upon the talent that we have, maybe different coaches can bring this team out to do different things that make sense. But for the first time, I think, really the second time, I guess, because under Chancellor Gallagher was really the one that said, you know what, for this university to grow, we need to invest in athletics. And that was a first opportunity. And then Heather certainly grew on that. And then Pat Gallagher single-handedly helped pick Joan Gable, who came from the University of Minnesota, understands what it's like to play in a city, understanding what it means to grow the endowment, understands what it means to build revenue, and then goes out and makes sure people don't understand this either. If Joan Gable didn't care about athletics, do you think she would have gotten rid of Heather who was adamantly, and I mean anybody that I talked to, she was adamant about NIL, that NIL would go away and that she didn't want anything to do with NIL. I remember the Victory Heights conversation when she went out and talked about Victory Heights. I think it may have been Chris Peak or maybe Jerry DePaula, who was incredible, asked a question about, well, what are you looking to do on top of Victory Heights NIL? She kind of lashed out at them and said, well, no, we're here to talk about Victory Heights. That was a groundbreaking moment to where I think is the fan base, but all of us in the closer circles that said, what are we doing here? Because if she's not invested into this, and that's why I also, to back up what I put out a couple weeks ago, I am beyond thankful for Alliance 412 because our athletic department did not have a vision with Heather Lyke at the helm. Chris Bickle, John Pelusi, Jeff Goldberg, Doug Whaley, that whole entire team kept Pitt athletics afloat. And it's great to see Doug Whaley a part of the staff. Chris Bickle will certainly be involved in a lot of what we're doing. They are much heavier, especially even larger donors that are very much involved. These guys are going to be involved for the future. But it's just the alignment is there. Now it's time to get on board and potentially, if it doesn't work out, and to your point, Harry, give Pat Narduzzi the respect he deserves because he has raised the ceiling here. He has shown he's able to win here. Show the man respect as he's been here 11 years and was loyal to this university. We talked about, the whole Michigan State search when that happened again. He was never going to get that job. I mean, he never even intended to look at that job, never wanted to go back to East Lansing. The whole fact is that this guy has been focused on one job and one job only, and it's always been Pitt. So to your point, I also agree, show the man respect and really, allow him to go out on his terms, especially if it happened at the end of this year. At the end of the day, I think all three of us can agree we want Pat Narduzzi to win out. That's the main key. We want Pat Narduzzi to win out. We want Pitt to go and be 10-2. That's a perfect plan. So we don't even have to address any of this stuff. But I think that when you watch it, it would be naive of us to not have that conversation to say, hey, there are certain things that have been repetitive on year, year after year. And I think that you guys have really hit a good point in terms of that. We have a super chat here from Pitt Hail to Pitt. Thank you, sir. And if you guys have not done so yet, subscribe down below and hit the like button on the video. It helps with the algorithm. Make sure you subscribe below. Enjoying the show so far. A little of the topic, but who do you think are the biggest NIL earners on this year's roster? My guesses are Eli, Kyle, and Des. Pitt fan H2P. You really answered your own question there, brother. That's really that.
Johnson,
I would imagine
Johnson as well.
Yeah, Kenny Johnson.
For
I mean,
sure.
you added those four guys,
and I think you summed it up there. Yeah, it's a great comment.
Yeah, and I think those are really the guys you have up there. And to Harry's point, Kenny Johnson is certainly on there after receiving a raise this year as well. And thank you, obviously, for the super chat. Thank you for watching the show. And again, guys, if you have not done so, if you're over on X, we've got really right now between all three, between Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, we've got a little over 1,000 people watching the show. I can see each one of them. We've got a lot of people on each one. X seems to have a lot of people. Make sure you go over and hit the like button and subscribe. Really going to finish up this show here, guys, and I cannot thank you both enough. I mean, even Karlo, you guys are always welcome on this show. I mean, you two are truly phenomenal, and I cannot thank you guys enough for coming on the show. If you had a prediction to go to the end of the year, always, especially with all of us on, what do you think? I'll start, Harry, with you. If you had to predict from right here, Pitt's 2-1. They're 2-1 on the season. They got the remaining 9 games, or I guess 9 games left. What do you think is the final record for Pitt football at the end of the year?
I got to tell you, I had reviewed the schedule, and God, I'm normally Mr. Positive, and everyone knows that. I think we're going to beat Louisville. I have to tell you, with the other than I see NC State and potentially Stanford.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm maybe looking at 5 wins this year, at most. If like you said, if we lose to Louisville, we could be looking at a catastrophic year. But I'm going to say we win that. So I'm going to say the win total at best is 5 games. And I hate even that coming out of my mouth. But this schedule is brutal.
Yeah.
So that to me is optimistic, and I'm normally much more positive than that. I'm trying to be realistic and not drink the Kool-Aid, because I've had the Kool-Aid in my mouth before, and it's burnt me. So I was on Eric's podcast, the Great BurghCave podcast, and when they had the Djokovic, and I was practically predicting a national championship, and that blew up in my face. So I'm going to
Me and you both, brother. Me and you both.
I was embarrassed after that, so I'm going to say 5 wins at best.
Eric, what do you think here? What do you think the final remaining record will be?
When we were on before the season started, when we were talking, I had 9-3 as my prediction.
Yep.
I hate being the guy that changes every prediction, everything off of one game. As bad as the West Virginia game is, I have the same stance and position when I talk about the Steelers or just any football in general. But I'm also going back into what I saw a little bit of last year with Eli and what I'm seeing this year. My confidence is falling
dramatically
with Eli. Can he turn it around? Of course he can, because he's got the talent to do so. I think it's all between the ears. Cade Bell's ineffectiveness of making some adjustments offensively. We had spoken about, some of the defense. They had a little bit of a lapse and an adjustment against Central Michigan. I am probably more or less of the 6-6 now, maybe a 7-5, just in case, because I do think games like Syracuse and other ones are winnable. I agree with Harry. I think Louisville, if Louisville's not a win, then Pitt's got to have some
more trouble.
Because they have no reason to come out flat. They got no reason to not show up. I mean, if I was on that team or anyone else on that team, I mean, I would love to watch practice or be a fly on the wall in the meeting rooms and such. I am going to back it off to either 6-6 or 7-5 at best. Although I'm going to reserve to change it after the Boston College game. We'll see where it's at. If they win those two games, maybe we change it again.
And to your guys' point, I'm in the same area as you. I'm going to say with Harry and you, 5-7 or 6-6, and here's why. Going forward, I am truly concerned, not just on offense of what we look like, the offensive line, schematically what we look like, but also too, when you're running that few plays and you're running that many 3-and-outs, your defense is going to be tired. Mm-hmm. And I have a real concern about this run game, and I have a real concern about this run defense. When you look at teams like Notre Dame, they run the football. You look at Georgia Tech, they love to run the football. You look at Miami, they're a really good 50-50 split in terms of the attack and what they're able to do. But the talent level that they have there and watching them play, I think Carson Beck is not the greatest quarterback in the world, but this system that he's in is allowing him to not have to be the superhero like he had to be at Georgia. I think that those three games have me worried. The Florida State game, that's down in Tallahassee, that has me severely concerned. I have, really, you look forward right now, we sit here today, I think Louisville, I'll even give them Boston College and Syracuse in those 3 wins, and then maybe a toss-up game, maybe NC State game to get you to 5 to 6 wins. I just think that when you look at this team, and again, people may ask me after the show, JJ, what really had you change? And it's not even just the West Virginia game. It's the combination of the first 2 games. Now, I could change my opinion again. That's the beautiful thing about the country. You can change your opinion whenever you want. But watching this team this week against Louisville will tell us a lot. If we come out and we see 14 penalties again, we see lack of execution again, we see drop passes, we see Eli struggle to find checkdowns or hit open receivers or take sacks or throw the ball randomly or fumble, that will change my decision where, okay, hey, we really are a 5-7, 6-6 football team. Because when you look at this, you look at the teams in front of you, there has to be legitimate corrections. And I think that's why I'm going to be happy to have you guys on down the road, because we can actually get a couple more games in here. We've had one Power 4 team on the schedule. That's number 1. That's West Virginia. We'll have another one coming up with Louisville, then Boston College, and then we'll be able to go through this more. But I am deeply concerned. And I think that, people may ask, well, JJ, what changed your mind? You hear a lot of things that come out of spring camp. You hear a lot of things that comes out of summer camp, and the same thing with fall camp. One of the things that I think really concerned me is not the schematics not just the schematics that would concern me. It's the overall effort. And to be truly honest, I'm deeply concerned of what I saw against West Virginia in terms of actual effort. That was not, and I know I'm going to get text messages from people within the realm of parents and whatnot. But there has to be sometimes the honesty is the best policy. And watching that game, that was not Pitt football. That was not a Pitt football team that I've been conditioned to watch. I had major high hopes for the linebacker room. There were concerns there. I had major high hopes for the offensive line. There were concerns there. The same thing with Eli. The same thing with the and by the way, I will say this right now. The one person that I thought, and I will say his name out loud, that played extremely well, by far the best football player on the field, was Cruz Brookins. That guy played from beginning to end, played his ass off, and was hyped the entire game. I mean, that guy played his ass off. And, some players may take this as a personal thing where, we don't, I'm not believing in them. It's being honest. In college football, it's hard to win. In the NFL, it's hard to win. We watched a game here, a couple hours ago with the Steelers. 5 turnovers and they barely won the football game. It's hard to win football games. You can't take any team lightly. And I'm just, watching that game multiple times now. That was not a Pitt football team that I'm used to seeing. That is not a Pat Narduzzi team that I'm used to seeing. Was honestly truly disappointed with the level of effort in that football game. I know Pat will come out and protect his guys. He'll come out and defend his guys. But, my calling to this football team was a little bit concerning. And I think for a rivalry game in a heated moment and watching those guys and just the lack of discipline, walking to the football and just even the offense, we're an up-tempo offense. Why are we walking to the football? To this day, that is forget coachable. That is just the bare minimum. I watched the West Virginia players run to the line of scrimmage. That's coaching. That was very concerning to me. And I think, I want that to change. I want these guys to really show up. And to your point, Harry, to your point, Eric, we're not we're not here to drink the Kool-Aid and give you guys BS. The honesty is in the picture. So, at the end of the day, I tell people, don't shit on my plate and tell me it's pudding. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, it is what it is. At the end of the day, we're watching a team struggling. So I will say this, final thoughts. We'll do our final thoughts around the horn here. Harry, for going forward for Pitt football, give me your thoughts. I know you gave your record prediction, but overall, do you see the changes? And then do you really believe, I guess I'll say this, do you see the changes really happening? But also number 2, I'll throw this one out there. Do you see a quarterback change at all this season?
Your first question in terms of seismic change, I think you're talking about.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think to your point, you can only keep repeating mediocre seasons or slightly above average seasons over and over again. And very few coaches have that long a run, 11 plus years. So yes, I think it's very, very much could happen with a poor season. Quarterback change, of course. I don't think I'm of the opinion if you're losing games, and Eric said it best, what's happening is right now is going on mentally. He's having a mental issue. I don't know that they have a sports psychologist to be great to work with, but they have a very talented freshman in Heichel, and Gonzalez is someone that's worked within the system. If you were losing games, you have nothing to lose, and absolutely, I could see a quarterback change.
Yeah,
Eric, what are your thoughts?
To do your first question, I'm sorry, your second question first is there going to be a quarterback change eventually this year? I say yes. I honestly hope I'm wrong. I'm watching the depth chart because I also from the little I've seen of Gonzalez, I don't think he's the answer either. Mm-hmm. I would like to see Mason. I mean, Harry, you and I sat at the spring game, and by far he was the best quarterback in spring.
It wasn't even close.
The anticipatory throws, just the poise. JJ, we spoke about his poise before. When he came in Central Michigan, fans just got to watch it you can't just go from third string to starter, because that means you got to get the practice reps first. I would be very curious to see once the depth chart comes out this week to see if he's number 2. Then Pitt's thinking the same thing too. Turning it around, like I said, it's really depends on what they look like against Louisville, and it's a mindset. It's not the talent outside. We've spoken about the size of the backs and some of the receivers, but it's a mindset. Pitt can play and should be able to beat these mid-tier ACC teams because they should be an upper-tier team competing with the Florida States and Georgia Techs now of the conference. I have to see more because honestly, for me, it's an incomplete because I'm kind of shocked that
I agree.
that's what they look like and against West Virginia, because it did not seem like a power 4 school.
And I agree with you guys. I do see seismic changes coming, and I think that unfortunately, again, hopefully we're wrong, but I do see a quarterback change at some point to where we look at the future and what happens here after the season. But guys, thank you all that were able to watch this show here tonight. We're lucky to have three great individuals with Karlo. Cannot thank you enough for the great questions. The show is what it is, not because of me, not because of anybody else, but because of each and every one of you Pitt fans. And I cannot thank you guys enough. The amount of you guys that come up to me, grab me, come up and say hello. You can certainly do the same with Eric. You can certainly do the same with Harry and Karlo. I mean, everybody on here, again, I talked about, forget the knowledge for a second, just great people. Harry, tell them where they can find you on social media and where they can follow you.
Yes, on X, I'm at Pitt Guru. I'm one of the original OGs. I founded the first 2 sites covering Pitt sports, and all else go under Harry Psaros. And I love interacting with people. Don't be shy.
Eric.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm on Twitter at TheBurghCave. We do check out. We have the YouTube channel BurghCave. One of my partners in crime, GB, and a bunch of others. We talk Steelers. We talk Pitt. Talk football. You see me sipping on these. I like having a beer when we're talking ball. It's the best thing guys can do. Get away, escape everything, get into a man cave virtually and everything. Talk some ball with us. We are setting up some regular lives as well. We're still filling out a schedule, but please subscribe to the BurghCave channel. Hit that notifications, because when we do come up with a schedule, you guys will be able to know. And please interact with us as well. And I'll be down. I'm definitely coming down to the Boston College game.
We will see you for that.
Yeah, schedule prevents me from coming to some other ones, but I am definitely going to be at the Boston College game, as with everybody else. If you guys see me, I'd love to say hi, share a beer with you guys, talk some Pitt, Steelers, whatever you guys would like. And hope to see you soon. I look forward to being back on with you soon, JJ.
Again, thank you guys, and I can't thank you guys enough. It's been an incredible show. Guys, we will certainly have each one of these guys on again. I love the panel. I love bringing them all on at once. It creates a great discussion. And again, cannot thank you guys enough for being subscribers to the podcast. Again, subscribe down below. Hit the like button. It truly helps out with the algorithm. Make sure you follow each and every one of these individuals as well. Guys, cannot thank you enough. That's another episode of Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen and the Sunday Conversation. Again, thank you as much as always. Hail to Pitt. Hail to ACC.
Hail to
I'll see you guys next time.
Take care.